Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro bodybuilder. Today's guest is Cade Zook. Cade, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
For sure, absolutely. So, Cade, we're going to jump right into a couple questions I like to ask all of my guests. The first question I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
All time, I'm going to have to say Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Evanson Tapani, guys like that.
Awesome, man. What's I'm sure kind of like the hardcore style of training is something that you appreciate about those guys. Is there anything else that you really like, let's say, about Dorian, Ronnie, Jay, Evan? What is that one thing that kind of sticks out to you from those guys specifically?
Mostly that, but also just like the mindset, you know what I mean? Like Evan's not a big social media kind of guy. He just, and Ronnie and Jay were, and also Dorian were around before any of that stuff. So it was just real, you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of stuff now is just done for the camera, and back then it was just real. And most in the mindset too. I love the mindset. That's a big thing with me. Like big fan of Dorian because of that, more so than his physique.
For sure. Okay, so since you brought up kind of the social media thing, I was kind of wondering about this in terms of you. Social media, just from an outsider looking in, doesn't seem like it's your thing. Why don't you talk about that? Why isn't your thing? Why do you not kind of partake in this whole social media game?
I guess because I started doing this before that was even around. And so when I started bodybuilding, I was 18. I'm 34 now. So it was 2005, and there was none of that stuff. And the guys that taught me how to do it, they were always like, well, you need to stay covered up. You need to, backstage when you're pumping up before you go on stage, you don't let anyone see your, you leave your clothes on to the last second. And I always just translated that over to like social media in a way. Like I would do a show and I wouldn't tell anybody I was doing it, because in my mind, it was like giving someone an advantage. So like if you're known for conditioning, like me and you are going to compete against each other, you're posting all these posts, right? I know you're doing it, but you don't know I'm doing it. So I'm watching you you don't even know I'm coming, right? So I'm over here preparing for you when you can't prepare for me. And even though it's bodybuilding, it's opinion, I think that stuff kind of matters a little bit. So if you're known for conditioning, let's say I'm known for conditioning, right? If you don't know I'm coming, you're more than likely not going to push as hard as you normally would, as opposed to if you would when you knew I was coming, right? So I always looked at it like that. And just the years of me not doing it, I kind of have like a social media anxiety. Like if I post something, I'm like, this is stupid. I don't think anyone's going to like it, or I don't, you know what I mean? It just makes me feel really uncomfortable. So like, I've never had sponsors or anything because of those reasons. I can't go on there and post like drinking my size on, like, because it's just a lie. And I just know it's a lie, and I just can't do it. So if I post something, it's real. And I wish I could make myself do a little bit more stuff. I'd probably have more clients and more notoriety or whatever, but I just can't do it.
That's cool, man. I was kind of going, excuse me, I was going through your Instagram, and your posts are spread out pretty far and stuff. But again, like I said, I wanted to bring this up, and you kind of brought it up right away, because everybody that I kind of hear, that thinks they know something about, how bodybuilders can make money and they got to use social media. That's kind of what they say. It's like, you got to be in social media. And you know what, man, like if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. Who cares? Like if you're not being 100% authentic and 100% you, like, dude, at the end of the day, like, do you? And that's that to me. I respect individuals like that a lot more than somebody that's just playing same game because they think that's what they have to do. It's fake. It's not real. So mad respect, man. And I'm somebody that, I compete in bodybuilding, and I competed a few weeks ago and turned pro in my drug-free organization that I compete in. But dude, you're not gonna see progress pics. Like, I'm just doing my thing, man. Like, I don't need to show everybody everything, right? So much respect for that, Cade. All right. So you already said 18 is when you started lifting weights. So that's kind of the second question I asked my guests, but why did you start at 18? What was kind of the reason behind that?
Well, I started before 18, but I started in high school because I played basketball. Basketball is my number one love to this day. So I was obsessed with Michael Jordan. And I've told this story before, but it's true. I would go to the gym with my dad, and I started going to the gym with my dad because I wanted to get bigger for basketball. Because I remember when Jordan was playing against the Pistons, the first time they played them, the Pistons were known for being so tough. And the first thing Jordan said was like, I got to get bigger and stronger. And they came back the next time and beat him because he was 225. He had like 20 pounds added on to him. So I was like, well, if Michael Jordan's going to work out, I'm going to work out. So I started working out with my dad at this gym, and I got pretty good results just because I trained like a bodybuilder kind of because my dad, did bench press and all the main stuff. So I had a little shape. But I found a Flex magazine at the gym that had Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover of it, where the year that Gunter beat Ronnie at the Night of Champions. And I just was blown away by the dudes and how big they were. And it had like a 12-week Arnold program or something in it. And I still have this magazine. So I took it home and I did that workout, and I got like the shape and a little bit of, stuff going on. And then after that I was kind of hooked, and that's just where it started.
Excellent. All right. So here in a minute, we'll get into kind of like your bodybuilding story, but I kind of always like to get the backstory of my guests in terms of kind of like their upbringing, their childhood. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, Cade, kind of where did you grow up? You already mentioned basketball. Just paint that picture a little bit of those younger years for us, if you don't mind.
I grew up in Florida until I was like 14, and my parents moved us here to Tennessee for my dad's job. He was a corrections officer, and now he's still in corrections. He's a warden now, so he's already at the top. But we moved here for my dad's jobs, and we just came here, and had no friends, no nothing, at age 14. So started a new school, and that's whenever I kind of fell in love with basketball because I didn't have anything to do. And I didn't have no friends, so I just had a goal in my driveway, and I played every day and taught myself how to play. And that's kind of just how that's how everything kind of came about, through that.
What was it about basketball that you enjoyed, or what kind of pulled you into basketball? Was it that Michael Jordan factor?
Yeah, it was Michael Jordan mostly, just because he was so intense, you know what I mean? And I just kind of gravitated towards that every time I would hear a story about him or watch something about him on TV. And from there, I went to Kobe. Kobe's my guy. That's my number one. Like, I love MJ, but Kobe's my guy. And Kobe was the same as him, but he's not a little crazier with the mindset. He'd play hurt. He would get, break a finger and pop it back into place and keep playing, and just stuff like that, man. Like, I always, I just always would think of him whenever something would, like an injury or something would happen. What would Kobe do in this situation, or Dorian Yates do? Once I got older and learned about him, I just kind of like guys like that, and they just, just pushed me to be the way I am, I guess, down the road.
Right. Did you grow up in a pretty disciplined home and a pretty structured home?
Discipline doesn't, my parents, they'll spank you if you act up and stuff like that. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. All that. Open the door for people, shake hands. So yeah, very good discipline like that. But no, my parents were cool, and they were strict, but they let us, be boys, because my mom had 4 boys. So she wasn't no crazy, like super strict on us, nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So outside of just basketball, did you play other sports? Was sports kind of the thing that kind of shaped your childhood for the most part then?
No, man, I never played sports at all. I never played a sport in my life until I moved to Tennessee. We played in the neighborhood, like home run derby and stuff like that kids do, but I never played an organized sport in my life until my sophomore year. So no, we played outside, and I was like a big skateboarder and BMX and rollerblading. I did all of it. Like, we just had like a good setup where we lived on prison property, and there was like all these buildings near us that had stairs and handrails and stuff like that. So we were outside all day long. We never stay inside. So it was just out there doing kid stuff all the day. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah,
when I moved here, I didn't have no friends. So I kind of went the sports route just to kind of make friends at school, I guess.
for sure, for sure. One more thing, and then we'll kind of transition out of the childhood, but is there anything from childhood, Cade, as you look back that you feel like had a huge impact on you, or kind of has tied into or played into you in adulthood right now?
Nothing specific. Probably just my dad and my mom, they both worked pretty hard. My mom, she always cleaned houses, and that's a pretty hard job, not for like a company, just for herself. And hands in, I went with her when I was a kid, sometimes, and I was like, man, I don't know how she does this stuff. And my dad, like, I think he had to retire to be able to have the money to move here, because we lived in like a trailer. So he like retired to have the money to move here. He started from the scratch, studied his butt off, worked his way back up. He even worked at like a gas station and stuff. Just not, there's people like, he just did what he had to do to provide. So, and just not ashamed, like not embarrassed. Like, who cares? Like, I'm 30 something years old working at a gas station, like, stuff like that. Just, you pay attention to things like that and you kind of remember it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So once you kind of finished up high school, what did life look like for you post high school?
Well, see, I was into bodybuilding, even though I wasn't competing as a senior. I was still playing basketball, but I was obsessed with bodybuilding because I went to a show when I was 18 for a guy at the gym, and I saw the teenagers on stage, and naturally you're going to compare yourself to that age group or whatever. So I was 18, so I was like, well, next year I'm still 19, I can do this show. So that's what I did. So I got so obsessed with bodybuilding at such a young age, I went all in. So I didn't go to school. I just worked. I worked full-time jobs just so I could pay for food and supplements and everything, gyms, and that's all I cared about. So that's all I did from the time I was 18 until when I turned pro. Like, I was all in, so I didn't go to school, nothing like that. But I always worked jobs where I would make enough money. I had the sense to know that you can't just sit at home and be a bum bodybuilder like a lot of these guys try to do and be an online coach. I've always had a job. I've never been that type of guy. Never laid around. Even now, I work for myself, but I get up at the same time every day and train clients. Like, we got a gym that we run, like me and other guys, a private gym, and I get up every day and do that. I don't have to do it, but I like to feel like I'm structured and have a routine.
For sure. So what did your parents, I mean, it's quite uncommon to have an 18, 19-year-old say, I'm not going to go to college and I'm just going to work and I'm going to bodybuild. What did your parents think about that when you kind of presented that to them or found out that's what you're going to do?
My parents are like number one supporters, man. They don't care. I think they went to every single show except for one. And the only one they didn't go to was one I didn't really tell anybody about because I had just got like 8th place at like North Americans or something. And I knew my qualification would run out. So I had to get requalified. So like 3 weeks later, I went to a show like 4 hours away, completely on my own. No one went with me, just to requalify for the next year. And they just couldn't make the trip because they went to Vegas, then they went to Pittsburgh because I did both shows and they just couldn't go. But I told them not to go anywhere. They went to every show I ever did. So they were super supportive.
Awesome, man. That's cool. That's cool. So who were, you kind of mentioned at the beginning that you had some people that were around you when you started training and bodybuilding that were kind of more old school and, told you to stay covered up. Are there a couple people that come to mind in terms of maybe bodybuilding mentors or early influences that you want to touch on and how important that was for you in the beginning of your bodybuilding experience?
Yeah. So no one around here ever made it very far. I think 1 or 2 guys may have done like junior nationals maybe, but no one's made it as far as I have. So they were just very good local bodybuilders and like regional state level bodybuilders. But like one guy in particular, his name was McClaren. I remember walking into this gym and seeing him. He actually was posing and he had his clothes off. So he was in there posing and I was like already wanting to do a show. Never done one. And the first thing I see is this guy. And I was like, I got to get to know this guy. I got to get in with him somehow. You know what I mean? And I guess he may have saw my or seen my drive or whatever. And he was cool, opened his arms up to me and let me train with him and stuff. And he's the guy that I posted about on Instagram, probably the last post I made, I think. And he was super cool. He has all kind of overall titles and stuff. Never, like I said, never on the national level or nothing like that. But it was mainly just Kenny. And then, after that, it was just, once I learned how to do everything, I just got obsessed, man. And then I didn't, have any other mentors until later down the road. Like, cause where I live at, it's really small. It's a really small town, and it's not big. Like, even to this day, I think I'm the only pro bodybuilder that's ever came out of this entire probably 300-mile radius, like probably more than that. Like, so there's not a lot of people that do it here. There's figure girls, bikini girls, men's physique. There's not a lot of bodybuilders here. So it's just if you do it, it's rare, like around here, so there's not much to go by. So now I'm the guy everybody goes to because I'm the only one left. So I'm the new Kenny, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, but yeah, but Kenny would be the one, man. And we pose every weekend and we do these old school workouts, the basic as it comes, and I learned a lot from him. So
Love it, man.
Shout out to Kenny.
Yeah, shout out to Kenny. I've got an individual like that taught me how to lift weights and was a bodybuilder, and it's kind of cool to hear about those early mentors or that early mentor, because I think most of us can trace back our bodybuilding experience to one individual, maybe that we met in person or a magazine or something like that. And it's always kind of cool to hear that. Now on your Instagram, I took a screenshot of it. I used it as the picture to kind of promote that we were going to have our conversation today. But what you wrote underneath the picture that I used today on my Instagram stories to promote our conversation, it really caught my attention. And you talked about this gym that I'm assuming you're still training at to this day, or maybe you're not, but up to that point, you've been training there for years. And it sounds like it's just basically kind of a hole in the wall dungeon. But do you know which post that I'm kind of referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, talk about that, because I love the fact that you said, hey, I've been training here for years, kind of a hole in the wall. The equipment's maybe not the best, it's got asbestos, all this stuff. But hey, if you do this consistently, just with whatever you have, you're going to get some sort of result. So talk about that, because I love that mindset mentality.
Yeah, so that's Kenny as well. So like, I met him at another gym, and all of his equipment, him and his friend was at this gym. And he's like, hey, man, we're moving to this other spot. I want you to come with us. It's a private gym. I was like, bet, wherever Kenny goes, I'm going to go. So he goes to the new gym, which is not a new gym. It's an old gym, which it's literally a house. It's like a house in the middle of a field, in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. And it's called C&K Gym. The walls are all purple because the woman who owns it's like super old school bodybuilder. Like, everything's purple, but it's still pretty sick. And I was there whenever I was 19, and I mean, it's still there now. I can still go to it anytime I want. I work at a gym, so I'm always there, like the gym we built, so I don't have to go there. But it's definitely like, there's pictures of me on the wall. Like, I trained there from the time I was 19 until I turned pro. And even though I was just there like probably in December of last year while we were building this gym. So it's definitely my home. But it's definitely like, anyone who goes there, like, you don't have, it's as basic as it comes. And the whole point of the post was saying, like, it's just mostly for young people, like young guys or whatever, they think they have to have all this stuff, but you just don't. Like, I didn't have anything. I don't have camera crews following me around, recording every dang workout I do and all this stuff. I don't have hype men yelling at me, and, my coach ain't training with me, nothing like that. It was just, and half the time I was there, it's like 7:30, 8 in the morning by myself. There's no AC in there. There's no heat. So it gets pretty cold in Tennessee. So it's freezing in there. You can literally see your breath. But that's just like, that's all I've ever known. I've never had a gym that I've never been to. Like, there's a YMCA here. I've never even stepped foot inside of it. There's, I've only been to gyms like that. The first one I ever joined was like that. And the gym I'm at now, we built, it's a steel building, but it's still that kind of equipment. It's still Cybex and hammer strength and all that stuff. And it's all used. It's all old, That's all I've ever known. And I just can't go to gyms like that. Like it gives me like, I just anxiety, man. I'm used to gyms with like 5 people in it. Like my gym has like 25 members. Like that's it. So I couldn't handle anything else, man. That's what I love.
Right. And kind of the point too with that post is just kind of like the consistency, right? I mean, isn't that the key to everything with bodybuilding? And I would say even life, if you just stick to something, you don't have to have the most or the best, but if you just stick to something, you're gonna get some sort of result. And that's doesn't speak more true than bodybuilding, right, Cade?
People overcomplicate bodybuilding so much, and it's such a simple, like it really, I always say this, but it really is as simple as chicken and rice. Like that's as simple as bodybuilding is. Like you don't need to eat these crazy foods, you don't need to do these crazy workouts. You just need to get stronger and work as hard as you can on what you're doing. But you don't need like the stuff you see on Instagram. I think Instagram is great, but I also think it's poison as well for a lot of things, like, you know, for false, like people think people are doing better than that they're actually doing. And then people act like they got Lamborghinis when they don't, you know, just stuff like that. It's all lies, man. So, but you know, it is what it is. It's the way the world is now. You can't live in the past forever. I sound like an old head, like, you know, one of those dudes that, you know, can't get over the past or whatever, but I can't do it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
but you're right. That's all it is, man. It's consistency. It doesn't matter where you go. Just work hard every day. Do what you're supposed to do. Obviously, you have to have genetics and the right supplements and all this stuff, but it really is that simple.
For sure. And by the way, we're the same age. So we kind of grew up pre-social media, and then now
Yeah.
we're, you know, exposed to social media. So we just kind of have a unique perspective as opposed to the generations now that literally they don't know anything different, right? So
No.
I'm right with you. Obviously, I love Instagram. That's how the podcast happens, and I love social media, but it's like you kind of said or alluded to, it's a double-edged sword. It's a two-edged sword. It can be used for a lot of positivity. It can also be used for a lot of negativity. But I think you're right, Cade. Like for the most part, it can be a huge distraction, especially for those of us in the fitness industry within bodybuilding. So I definitely understand your perspective. And like I said earlier, I value it. I appreciate it. Now, going back to kind of your getting into bodybuilding, how did you do you kind of, is your training, has your training evolved over the years? Or do you kind of basically just train the same way that you've always trained? And what does that kind of look like in terms of split and some of your movements that you like the most?
I think it has evolved a little bit, but for the most part, I've always been like, I wouldn't say volume. Like I was volume back in the day, you know, because that's what I saw with Ronnie and Ronnie, not so much, but he did do a lot of volume. Like he trained 6 days a week. And Arnold, I started out like Arnold, like superset and everything. And I wasn't getting much bigger. I couldn't get past like 250, 260. Plus my job was a pretty busy job. I was on my feet literally all day, walking and walking, walking. So that had something to do with it too. But once I switched, I started working with John Meadows in 2012. And he was the first one to really teach me how to train the right way. And when I say that, just by how detailed his emails were, like he would send me, I started to understand what he meant when he would say, like, I want you to do a hard set of 8. When you get to that set of 8, I want you to stay there for 3 more sets. We'll call that 3 sets. You see what I'm saying? So by that time you've done 6 or 7, but he only counts as 3. And things like that I learned from him. And he's the one that really taught me how to train and he got me over that 300-pound mark too, with all the food he made me eat. But yeah, I mean, even now I still do like a bro split, you know, 5 days a week. I take 2 days off. I do cardio 5 or 6 days a week too. But I still do volume, but I don't do it near as much. Like I know when to stop now. I'm a little bit better about listening to my body, stuff like that. So always been a kind of a volume guy, but as heavy as I could possibly go. But also like, you know, I know when to roll with it. Like if I did 315 on incline last week for 10, and today 275 feels really heavy, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm not going to try to force that 315. And I've always been like that kind of guy. Like, I don't get too like worked up by the logbook. So that what that means is like those logbook guys think they have to hit this stuff every week. And me, I've just been like, well, today's not my day. But I still would make up for it with volume and intensity. And, you know, people can argue that all they want, but I got up to 325 pounds, you know, training that way. You know, I've never squatted more than 500 pounds in my life because my back was always so screwed up. So you don't have to squat 600-700 pounds to have big legs either. So there's things that, you know, that I did and things I didn't do that you can kind of argue, you know, what works and what doesn't. I think it's just what works for you. And the hard part is just figuring that out. I think guys spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. They see what their idols doing. They think, I got to do that, or I got a barbell row, or I got to do this exercise. When really, that's just not for you. I used to think I had to do deadlifts. I used to think I had to do barbell rows for my back, and all I just would end up doing is hurting my back, my lower back every week. You know what I mean? So once I started figuring things out and doing things that I felt rather than I thought that was the right thing to do, I started progressing a little better.
Excellent. Talk about John Meadows. Obviously, he's not with us anymore. I had Andrew Berry on the podcast the other day, and it was pretty tough for him to talk about John. Was John somebody that kind of was more than a coach to you, Cade? I mean, did he kind of become a mentor and really kind of speak into your life outside of just bodybuilding?
I didn't get super close with him like Andrew, but I definitely looked up to him because he was the man to me. You know, he's older than me, so you know he had that wisdom factor that I kind of looked up to him. Like, you know, like the old dudes, they say something, you just listen to them. If someone's like 35, you're like, I ain't listening to what he said. But like, you know, he's older than me, and he had the physique to go with it. I read all his articles and stuff. There's just something about him that I just believed. You know what I mean? He's just a good dude. Like, no matter how annoying I was, I look back at my old emails and I was pretty annoying. He answered me just in the nicest way possible every time. And, you know, you learn a lot of things from him. Like, I try to be nicer to my clients when they ask me annoying questions. I think about John, stuff like that. So it's like, I learned a lot from him, but we never was close to him like that. I met him at the Arnold Classic before and stuff. We talked a little bit, but I just looked up to him as a man and as a bodybuilder because he worked so hard. And he knew he didn't have the prettiest physique in the world, and he just always got in shape and just always he never gave up, you know. So
For sure.
I kind of resonated with him on that.
Yeah, definitely a grinder. Is he was he your coach when you turned pro, or did you have a coach at that time or not?
No, Andrew Vu was my coach when I turned pro. I was with John, and then I went from John to Matt Jansen, and me and Matt's one of my best friends to this day. We were together like 5 years, and I left Matt for no reason. I just had a feeling, you know, I need to go with this dude, and then I went with Andrew, and I turned pro. You know, people ask me about that all the time, but there's literally, I don't have an answer for you. I just felt it in my gut. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
So let's go back. I want to talk about your competition history. You started so young. But before we go there, I am curious to ask you this, Cade. When you started bodybuilding, 18, 19 years old, started competing, was your mindset, I mean, because, you know, you're not going to college, you're just going to work, you're going to bodybuild. Was your mindset at that age, like, I'm going to turn pro and I'm going to make this into a career, or I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do with my life? Is that where your mind was at that age when you started off, or not?
It's funny because I was so all in, but that didn't even cross my mind. So like, all I cared about was like, as long as I have enough money to be, you know, to pay bills and live, like, I can do this, you know what I mean? So it was literally show to show. So I would do one show, and that's all I cared about. There was nothing else. And then once I won that show, or if I didn't win, it was automatically the next goal, the next show. And I would go show to show. And eventually I just kept getting better because I was so focused on that one show was my Mr. Olympia. You know, I didn't have to do this for Instagram. I did it for this one show. And then over time, you know, the years of doing that, I was just getting bigger and better, learning more and learning more. And I didn't even consider going pro until 2014. So I was 8 years in almost. I did the Tennessee State show and I won the overall, and everybody was talking about me. They're like, man, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen. Like, the improvements you've made, you were so big, blah, blah, blah. You need to do North Americans, because it was in August. North Americans in September. I'm like, I ain't ready for that. But Matt Jansen coached me for that show. He's like, let's do it next year. You're qualified. Let's train for it all year and let's just do it next year. And that's how it was. So I was like, well, I got and plus I didn't think I could do a national show until I won an overall. And that was my first overall. So I was like, now that I got one, I'll train for it. And I trained for North American. So it never even crossed my mind. Like, a lot of these kids, they want to turn pro before they even step on stage. And it was not even a thought of mine. Like, because when I was a bodybuilder at 19 years old, a pro was Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler and Marcus Rule. And I couldn't even comprehend being a pro. You see what I'm saying? So that didn't even register in my brain. Now, the lamest dudes in the world are turning pro, and it's so much more attainable, and it feels more attainable because of what? Social media. So, you know, you keep going back to social media. And, but yeah, that's what it was. It was show to show, goal to goal, and that was it.
Excellent. Okay. So competition history, you brought up, you know, a show or two there discussing what I asked you, but just talk about, you know, we'll skip over some of the local shows or whatever. So you talked about the first time you competed nationally. Why don't we start there and then talk about those experiences up to when you earned your IFBB pro status?
Well, the first show that I did was North Americans for national show. And the reason I chose that show is because Dallas McCarver also was from Tennessee, and he did that show in 2012, and he won the overall and he turned pro. And I was like, I want to win that show too. You know what I mean? Because there's just like, I don't know, it's like a competitive thing. I couldn't compare myself to Dallas because he was on another level, but it just made me want to. He's a Tennessee guy. I'm a Tennessee guy. I want to do it too, right? So I just chose that show, and for some reason that show never left my head. I did it 5 times, and the first time was 15, and I got 7th place. So I knew I was like good enough to hang. And I was actually staying with Dallas at Matt Jensen's house for that show. Dallas was getting ready for his first Olympia. So I got to see him in person while I'm doing the show that he inspired me to do. I don't even know if he knows this. I mean, of course I can't tell him now, but I don't even think I ever told him. But yeah, so I was living with Matt in Dallas for like 2 weeks, probably like 10 days or something, I don't remember. And Dallas was training for the Olympia, and I was training for North Americans, and Matt was training both of us at the same time. We just chill, eat all day, train, just live the life, man. And so I got 7th, and I think he got 8th or no, he got 13th, I think, on his first Olympia. So I already had it in my mind, you know. So I'm like, I'm gonna run it back next year. But I had to requalify because I got 7th, and the only top 5 states qualified. So there was a show that I did when I was a local level called the Knox Classic, right? I did that show, I think, 3 times, and I always wanted to win that show. So I was like, well, if I got to requalify, I might as well win the show I've always wanted to win. So I went and requalified at the Knoxville, won the overall, and I went back to North Americans like a month later, and I got 5th. So I was top 5. I didn't have to requalify. So that was 2016. 17, I went to USA. I got 8th, and I didn't plan on, you know, I planned on winning that show, but I got 8th. Then me and Matt dieted some more to go to North Americans about a month later. I got 8th there as well. And that's kind of whenever I was like, all right, something ain't working here. Then I did the other show that I told you about earlier to requalify that my mom and dad didn't go to. And in 2018, I hired Andrew Vu. And that would have been the show that I would have liked to have turned pro at, because that was the best I ever looked. And Ron Gordon won that, which he deserved. He looked sick. But right after that show, I was like on a roll, man. I was 2nd place looked the best I ever looked. I was like 295, getting ready to go to nationals. And I tore my tricep. 6 weeks out of nationals. And so, I've been waiting all these years to do good. Finally, like on top, finally getting talked about, second place, questionable second place. I get hurt, tear my tricep, have to have surgery, can't do nationals. Hunter Labrada won nationals. So that happens. So now I'm like pretty crushed, like I was all the way up here where I worked so hard to get. And now I'm just back down here. But I'm like, man, I still think I can win this show. So I rehab my tricep on my own. I come to the gym every day at like 4 a.m. and do these exercises. I didn't go to physical therapy. It was all myself. Get my tricep back. I'm bench pressing like 135 within like 6 weeks after surgery. Then I'm like, I'm going to do North Americans again. But I didn't tell nobody because everybody thought I was hurt. So I didn't tell nobody I was doing it. So I came back to North Americans less than a year after tearing it, and I turned pro there. So that's kind of the story of that. I haven't competed since, but I think you had Nate Spear earlier on, right? Me and Nate competed against Nate, got second at that show, and which Nate's a cool dude. And but yeah, that was a crazy. It was cool because I wish I could have turned pro when I looked my best, but now I got a cool story at least. Like the story is kind of cool, like because I'm like a hardcore guy, I guess. So at least they can be like, well, he tore his tricep and still turned pro. You know what I'm saying? So like at least I got that. I'll take it. So, but yeah, it's all good. I'm happy.
You've got a cool Instagram story right there, Cade, right?
Yeah, there's actually a post on there. You have to scroll down a little bit, but I lay out the timeline of it, and it's like, I have all the dates and stuff, and I have the pictures to kind of match the dates, and it's a pretty cool post.
Oh, I love it, man. And yeah, and speaking of Nate, I actually had him on earlier this morning, just released that episode, and he brought you up because he's like, hey, he's like, I think you had, or you're gonna have Cade on, and he's like, I think he took third place, or maybe he took second to when you got your pro card. Now, was that 2019 or 2020?
2019, Nate got second to me. 2020, he got third to Nick Walker and Bundy.
Right, but you turned pro in 2019, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about you just said it, you haven't competed since then. Where are you at in terms of, I know you're training people, I know you're still training, I know you're still living the life, but why haven't you competed since you turned pro?
Well, I did plan on it. The tricep really was a worse injury than I thought. My arm's never been the same. My shoulder's jacked up now because of the compensation. See, although I came back quick, I did rush it. I was, in my mind, it was like I should have done dumbbell work more. I should have done more isolation work to get that tendon stronger and the tricep stronger. But instead, I was doing like barbell stuff because I was thinking if I'm moving weight, at least I'm moving weight. So now I got this jacked up shoulder. I tore my bicep recently. I tore my meniscus a year and a half ago, and it just ain't for me, man. I'm not gonna be one of those top tier guys, and the things that I would have to do at 6'3" to even be a C-list pro, a D-list pro, 8th, 10th place at best, is not worth it. And it's not worth it for my health, and it's not worth it for my time and money and body. And I could just be working, and I'm still training. I haven't missed a meal since I can even remember. So like, I'm still me, I'm just not going to step on stage once a year. I think I'm not officially retired, but I'm pretty sure I'm retired. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not me anymore. And I think if you can't do what you're capable of, and if you have just any ounce of like holding back when it comes to training, when it comes to bodybuilding, you don't need to compete. Like, I would put 10 plates on the hack squat and not even think twice about it. Now I'm like, man, let's put 5 on there. You know what I mean? My knees hurt. And I just don't think I have what it takes mentally and physically, but I'm wiser and older. And, to me, it just doesn't seem like very rational, like a rational idea to put yourself through that for no possible outcome, like a good outcome. Like, where am I going to get 8th place at the Puerto Rico Pro and get a check for $400? And like, who cares? So it's a hard pill to swallow when it's all you've literally known in the switch. It's just like turning a light switch on and off, like that quickly it's over. So there's been no like transition for me to like, it's just kind of done. And COVID happened, the gyms were shut down and I still was going and stuff, but like, it's just like, it sucks because I want some guys to know that this stuff is going to end soon. Your body, you're only as good as an injury, man. Well, you're one injury away from really ending yourself in this sport. So I just hope guys have stuff lined up financially and also mentally. It's just hard, man. It's hard to be the man and then to just go from that and then have nothing. Not that you have nothing, but you know what I'm saying. Like, you're used to being on that stage, you're used to getting that Instagram hype and all this stuff, and you're getting, a lot of these pros are getting 20,000 likes a picture. What happens when that's over with? Are you going to be able to handle it? And that's another thing about social media that's going to hurt people, is like, when they don't have that no more, are they going to be able to handle it? I never had it, so I don't care. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. I want to go a little bit deeper on this, Cade, because this is something that people need to hear. And it's not only for bodybuilding, but anytime that you're passionate about something and you kind of put all of your eggs in one basket, which that's what you have to do to be great. And going back to Michael Jordan and Kobe, I'm actually reading the book called Winning by Tim Grover, who was the personal trainer of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and just unbelievable. Have you read that book? Or okay.
Yeah, I read it.
Right. So, I'm reading this book about, it's authored by Tim Grover, the personal trainer of Michael Jordan, Kobe. And he's talking about again and again and again, if you want to be elite, if you want to be a winner, if you want to continue to win, you've got to be all in. There is no such thing as balance. So understanding that, in order for you to get where you want to be in terms of bodybuilding and just kind of your natural makeup, you were all in, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I really think this is something that we need to dig a little bit deeper in, if you don't mind. So you just said you're going, and then at the snap of a finger, it's over with. You had a triceps injury, and basically it's all over with. So how have you mentally, and maybe you're still trying to work through it, and I understand that, but I want you to talk about this. How have you mentally been able to just kind of like continue to move forward, knowing that you were this guy and you probably aren't going to be that guy in the future?
Yeah, no, it's a very hard adjustment. I'm still kind of dealing with it a little bit. I see these guys competing, like Nick Walker winning the Arnold on his first try at 27 years old. Like, people don't understand how impressive that is. Like, at 27, I was winning my state show, and I thought I was the man. So imagine that. So it's like, it sucks, man. It's hard, but I deal with it. But I'm pretty mentally strong. I don't think about it too much, but when I think about it, I think about it. But seeing these guys, like that doesn't help. Makes me kind of envious a little bit, but it is something that's hard to deal with, and I think more guys need to think about that. And it's like Turner said whenever you had him on, you need to have more things that you're doing for reasons like this. I think, and he's right. You need to have more hustles or whatever, just things to keep your mind occupied, because there's going to be a day when it's over, like you said, and what are you going to do? You're just going to, the way I deal with it is pretend I'm dieting for something. I'll be like, oh, I'm trying to get lean, but it's just me trying to stay in a routine. And that's probably the best answer I could give you, is you pretend that you have something going on, and it's just your way of I fix my meals every day. So me doing my meals, me doing my training at 11 o'clock every day, me doing this is me still being a bodybuilder, right? I don't have the stage, but I still have all the things that make me feel like I still am. And the size is going to go down. I'm okay with that. But you're just going to have to find the best way to deal with that. However it may be, but some guys are going to be better than others, obviously. But Yeah, I still deal with it, internally. I don't really let it show. I make jokes about it. I'm a big, like, I'll joke on myself and say I'm skinny. I don't care to, self-deprecate or whatever, but like, um, but I do deal with it. I do think about it. But I'm also happy for people who Nick Walker and whoever, like when I see that, I don't get jealous. I'm happy. Like, but I just try to put it into my clients. If I have guys competing, I had a guy compete yesterday. He won the overall in the novice. He got second in the open, which I was bummed about, but I'm happy for him. So as long as I have things to be involved with it, I think I'll be okay.
100%. And I think just being able to, like you said, pour into your clients, because you have experiences, Cade, that we all have different experiences, and we all have a story, and we all have experiences that other people don't have. So your experience is being able to pour into your clients and being able to educate, and thank you for coming on the podcast, because you know what, this is going to go out. There's going to be quite a few people that are going to listen to this, and you being just upfront and kind of saying, hey, I'm still kind of struggling with this. This is something I struggle with. Like that's gonna touch somebody, man. That's gonna impact somebody. Like having Nate on, like I didn't know anything about him. He comes on and talks about his 10, 15 year struggle with drug addiction, being in prison, 3 rehabs. I mean, him being vulnerable, which sometimes us bodybuilder guys and fitness guys, we don't want to talk about being vulnerable, but the fact is, when we are vulnerable, when we just say, hey, you know what, however we say it, like this is me, this is what I'm struggling with, somebody listens to that and somebody gets impact, and that can change somebody's life. So I guess me just kind of saying, hey, thank you for coming on this podcast and talking about that and being willing to talk about it, because that's real life, man. Let's put Instagram aside. Let's put all the fake stuff aside. Like I told Nate, and we were having our conversations, like we've all got issues, dude. We've all got struggles. An IFBB pro, Nick Walker, puts on his shoes just like you do, just like I do. We put our underwear on, we put on our clothes just like everybody else. We're all human beings, man. And if we can just share a little bit of our life to help somebody else, like I think that's really something in the future. You sharing your story, educating people, talking about your experiences, that's going to be a big way, I think, that you're going to be able to give back to the next generation and give back to the bodybuilding community. So thanks, man, for touching on that. I really appreciate that. Now, let's talk about coaching a little bit. I mean, the 3 coaches you brought up, they're 3, John Meadows, Matt Jansen, Andrew Vu, 3 of the top coaches maybe ever. How important is it, do you think, for somebody that's just getting into bodybuilding to get a coach right away? Or do you think it's good for them to kind of learn their body on their own and then maybe pursue a coach? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's good to learn on your own and then pursue a coach once you get to a certain level. There's so much information out there that people get overwhelmed with because of the internet now. But I'm glad I was able to do the things I did, make the mistakes I made. But I did learn a lot from all 3 of those guys. From everyone. I wouldn't have turned pro if it weren't for John Meadows or Matt Jansen, even though Andrew was the last one. But I wouldn't have turned pro without those guys. It just wouldn't happen. The things I learned from John, I still use. The things I learned from Matt, I still use. So it's very important to have a coach, I think, if you want to go far. But you need to learn how to train. You need to learn how to eat. And I think that's what's lost now, is the training and the eating. Man, guys are scared to put on size. They're scared to get fat. I didn't care, man. I just wanted to see that number go up on the scale, and I just ate. If it had protein in it, I thought it was good. You know what I'm saying? So, but I learned a lot through that too, that it was refined by those guys that I think was very important too. So could I have done it faster if I had a coach from the start and the same drive? Absolutely. But I don't regret doing it the way I did it. And I think it is important to kind of learn how to get after it on your own without someone making you do it. You know what I mean? Like having that self-drive without a coach holding you accountable. Because if you're not that kind of person, the coach isn't going to make you that kind of person anyway, right? So I think it is important, but it's a little less likely nowadays because of people want it so fast. And then that's understandable because that's what's being displayed all day long on their phone.
Absolutely.
So
You brought up another podcast guest of mine, Turner Riddle. Talk about your friendship, your relationship with him, and maybe just some things that you guys have shared together in terms of life experiences.
Yeah, Turner's a Tennessee guy, so I met Turner through Dallas, not through Dallas, but like when I was staying with Dallas and Matt, Turner deep texted me like on Instagram or Facebook, like, "What y'all doing?" You know, just being nosy, because he was friends with Dallas and friends with me, so we start talking, making jokes. Got the same kind of personality I do, and we got a lot of inside jokes between us about things, about coaches and stuff, and sending people's posts to each other on Instagram. You know how it is, but yeah, man, we just kind of clicked when we first met because he's the same kind of guy as me. He's pretty stubborn, just like me. We're pretty much the same person. He's more outgoing than I am, but deep down, like we're the same guy, and that's probably why we click. And he's serious. He don't ever, he miss meals. He trains hard. He don't miss workouts. And I told him, I would go to every show he ever did, because he went to all my once we became friends, he would go to all my shows. So he lives about 5 hours from me, so I don't see him very much, but he still made the time to go to my shows and stuff back when I was trying to turn pro, and now I'll be paying him back. So anytime he competes, I go to a show, and we're just good buddies, and we talk every day. But yeah, he's one of the best here, man. Even though he's not pro, he's a pro. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Turner.
Cool. Now you've brought up Dallas McCarver several times, and then obviously Matt Jansen, but kind of that time in your bodybuilding career and experience, Cade, being able to be around somebody like Dallas and just kind of in that incubator, I guess, so to speak, of bodybuilding, was that kind of like one of the highlights of your bodybuilding experience when you were around Dallas, when you were connected with Matt, when you were kind of in, once again, to use that word, that incubator? And why don't you talk about that? Because obviously, just as a fan from the outside, following Dallas, hearing about him, now hearing Matt talk about him after his passing, and a lot of other people, there seems like there was some sort of special aura about Dallas, and just something very special and unique. A lot of people say he was going to be a future Mr. Olympia. So why don't you just talk about that? Because you've brought it up several times, and I'm just kind of interested to hear from your perspective what that was like being around some of those athletes and those people during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I could honestly say that the best experiences I've had in bodybuilding were being around like Matt, like through Matt, like Dallas and Justin Compton, and the things I got to see up close. So, but Dallas, man, he was just you really had to see it in person to believe it. And I don't mean like on stage, but like in person, like up close. Like I remember one time I was eating breakfast and he came downstairs to fix his breakfast, and he walked right by me, and he didn't have a shirt on. He had shorts on. His calves were they were literally almost touching. And I was just staring at him while I was eating, like lusting, basically, and I'm like, how is this possible? You know what I mean? And there's just no question in my mind he would have been Mr. Olympia. There's just no question. I've never seen anything like it. And I've seen a lot of guys, close. Kai, Phil, I've seen them all up close. And they are all insane in their own way. But Dallas was just 6 foot, 1, with that kind of roundness and size and shape. It's just unreal proportions. I mean, they didn't come like that very often. It's sad that he never got to realize that potential. But yeah, man, like the best experiences I ever had and the coolest things I've ever seen and done was through Matt Jansen, for sure.
Right. What's something, because obviously everybody that's going to be listening to this, they know who Matt Jansen is. If not, they're probably not that big into bodybuilding, but in terms of Matt and kind of what he, maybe not necessarily just coaching, but just life or some sort of lesson, what did you learn from Matt? What did you actually glean from him, moving forward in bodybuilding, but also life?
I don't understand why Matt gets the hate he does from some people. I could understand if see, I've never seen it. So I was around, if you see someone in person and that's all you ever see, and you hear someone say something about him, you can't comprehend that being true, right? Because you're like, I know this guy. That's Matt to me. Like I've lived with him for probably 6 weeks total of time, like if it's all added up, in hotels in this house. And I've never seen anything but generosity and good from him. Like he's probably too nice, to be honest with you. So the people that talk about him truly don't know him. And I think it's just, everybody, like you said, everybody's got skeletons in their closet. Everybody's got something, but the stuff I hear about Matt, I just don't believe, and I just can't believe it because I've never seen anything to represent that. But I learned a lot about even training. Like Matt's younger than me, but you wouldn't think he's younger. He comes across as like a 50-year-old. Like he's very serious. He's got a good personality, but he's a very serious guy. And I look up to Matt, even though he's younger than me. Like he's like, I mean, he's wise beyond his years. Like he's in the position he's in because he deserves it. There's no doubt about it. Like I remember back whenever we was starting, like I was Matt's first ever big guy. Like before me, and Matt can tell you this, he can attest to this. He only did macro diets. He only did macro. So I got with Matt and he sends me this email, right? And it's nothing but numbers. And I'm old school. So I'm the way I am. I'm with John Meadows. And then before that was just me. Matt sends me this chart of numbers and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? He's like, that's your macros. I'm like, dude, I'm not adding this up. I was like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll send you what I eat and then you add the macros up and you send me a diet back. And he's like, okay. And then after that, he did it. And from me, he quit doing macro diets. He doesn't do them now. He's all, the same way it is, like the bodybuilding way. But I was his first like guy over 250 that he ever prepped because he had a big like coaching business going on. It was called Innovate back in the day, and didn't have that many like big time bodybuilders, but he had some good ones. And yeah, that's how we started. But I learned a lot from Matt, and I think he learned a lot from me. I think he can probably still say to this day that I'm probably the most like relaxed. People, when a show comes, guys stress out, man. You see a competitor's true colors when it's like 1-2 days out, right? You see how they act. I'm pretty sure I can still say I'm probably Matt's number one most chilled out guy ever that didn't complain and just did what he said. But Matt's my boy. I love him, and he deserves what he has.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I again, from the outside looking in, I admire him. I've actually emailed him, gone back and forth about him coming on the podcast, and I've sent him DMs on Instagram just like I do with you and other people, and he responds. And that just goes to show he's got a million different things going on, and somebody just to respond, somebody to respond to a random DM. I mean, it just goes to show the type of individual he is, and everything that they've got going on with Raw and Revive down there in Florida now. Just respect, man. It's really cool to see people pursuing their dreams and then beginning to fulfill them. So awesome stuff. We're gonna head towards the finish line here. A couple of things I want to ask before we wrap up here, Cade. What has bodybuilding taught you? If you kind of look at bodybuilding at a bird's eye view, what is that one thing or a couple things that you feel like bodybuilding has taught you or given you in terms of just life?
Obviously, hard work, right? And basically, and probably the most important thing is patience. I'm a pretty patient guy, and just naturally, but if you can't be patient, you're not going to be a good bodybuilder or figure competitor, bikini, whatever. Like that's the number one thing. So, if you got a job you don't like, and it translates to anything in the world, you can't just quit your job because your boss is a dickhead. Like you got to be. People just need to be more patient, and I think that's what bodybuilders taught me, to be patient and also consistent, and to work hard. And it also lets you know, like, if you can be a good bodybuilder, and even just there's obviously different tiers of bodybuilders. I never made it to the top tier, but if you can be a good bodybuilder, you can be pretty much good at whatever you want to be. I mean, for the most part, like if you put that kind of effort into that, and that's probably the most of it is those patience, consistency, and just to work hard, man. Like without, I don't think I would be where I am if I didn't have bodybuilding. You know what I mean? Like I see things that's taught, and mentally, it teaches you a lot mentally too, to be mentally strong because of pain. You see people like they get hurt or they're sick and they act like it's the end of the world. And like I'm used to being in pain 24/7, whether it's injuries or just nagging backaches or whatever. So it's like you just learn to like just keep going. You know what I mean? And I think bodybuilding has taught me. It shows me most of those things, as weird as and cliche as it sounds, but um, that's the most part.
Looking back on all of your bodybuilding experiences and either speaking to your younger self or speaking to some of the younger listeners right now, what are a couple things that you would like to share with your younger self or a young person that's watching or listening to this podcast?
To me, it would be listen to your body more. Don't, and to go back to the exercise, don't think you have to do this. I remember hurting my back and then thinking, I still have to do this stupid exercise. You know what I mean? I have to deadlift or whatever. And just through that, hurting myself down the road more for like leg training or whatever. So it's just like, I wish I could teach myself to listen to my body more. I would go back. I'd probably be doing a lot better now. And for the kids, man, it'd be patient, man, and be and don't worry about what everybody else is doing. You know what I mean? Like that's the main thing. Like just do you. Like who cares if this kid turns pro at 21? That doesn't mean and you're 29 or 30. That doesn't, you know what I mean? Your clock's still ticking. Like it just do you. It doesn't mean anything. Don't get down on yourself because of the things you see on social media. And don't think you have to do something because your freaking boy on social media is doing it. Like you're gonna get hurt. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but you can't teach that stuff. I really don't think these kids they're just too into it now. And it's not their fault. It's just not. But it sucks to see. But you know what I mean?
So do you kind of keep up, Cade, on kind of what the current happenings are in the IFBB, or do you pay attention to any of the shows or not really?
Yeah, I keep up with it, but I don't. I love bodybuilding, but I don't like talking about bodybuilding. Like some of these guys will watch like workout videos while they eat. I don't do that. I don't watch no one's YouTube channels. I don't watch freaking podcasts unless my friends are on them. And that's no offense to bodybuilders or nothing. That's just like I don't want to listen to you talk about chicken and rice all day. Like I don't care.
Right.
Man. So like I keep up with the shows though. So
okay, because I was just curious, are there any younger guys or guys currently on the IFBB circuit that you, in terms of their physique, that you really respect or just think that sometime down the road they're going to be legit?
yeah, there's a few. My buddy Zach Merkel, he has a lot of potential. We competed against each other, I think 3 times. Zach's got a killer physique and he could be Mr. Olympia. I really believe that. It's up to him, but I think he could be Mr. Olympia. And then obviously Nick. And I wasn't a fan of Nick, and I don't mean like a hater or nothing like that. He's just a short guy, little ball of muscle. But like I'm a fan of Nick as a bodybuilder because of he just he literally does everything that you're supposed to do that no one does. You know what I mean? Like if you watch him pose on the Arnold stage, he held every pose for the whole entire time, and no one did that. And then the kid just eats and breathes it. And the only guy that I can remember being like that, and not even on Nick's level, would be Justin Compton. Like he was that way. He was super hardcore dedicated. Justin would sit in a room and not even watch TV, just stare at the wall. Like, not that I was with him to observe that, but that's just what kind of guy he was. Like, he was just like, didn't care about anything but bodybuilding, So it's unfortunate that he's not doing it anymore because he had so much potential. But like Nick's the real deal, man. Like, I don't think he's gonna beat Rami or anything like that, but he's a top 5 dude. Like, and that just shows you what being so dedicated will do for you in this sport. And people should take notice of that. The guys that he's beating that have been there longer or that are structurally better should take notice of that. And because the kid ain't no joke. So those two guys right there, the young dudes, and Ian and Hunter, they're obviously, they're spoken for. We know they got potential, but like Zach and Nick are two guys that, well, Zach's probably one that no one talks about, but Nick, Nick earned my respect just by being, because if you know, like, what I'm saying, like people that don't know, they see him, but a true bodybuilder, like, observes and they know what Nick's doing. So like mad respect to Nick, because he deserves it.
Now, Zach, he's another guy. I've reached out to him tons of times. I would love to get him on the podcast because he's another guy, kind of like you, not a social media guy at all. He's kind of picking up a little bit because I think he's sponsored by Redcon or something. I'm sure he probably has to make certain posts or whatever, but he seems like a very chill, reserved, kind of behind the curtain, behind the scenes guy. I would love to get him on the podcast. So I'm glad you brought him up. Because I know he made his pro debut earlier this year, had a pretty strong showing. And I'm right with you, has a lot of potential. Now, to kind of wrap things up, we've got the Olympia coming up this weekend. Do you have a top 3, top 5, top 6 that you kind of want to share or not?
I don't think anyone's beaten Rami. I just don't think it's going to happen. And for as far as like top 4, top 5, I think you got. I think Hadi's probably locked in for number 2. He's pretty nasty. But I think Nick could be as low as 3rd. I think he could. I think Brandon's very beatable because of his lower body and because of his conditioning. And I think Bonak's beatable because Nick's so hard and dry. Nick is like Flex Lewis hard, like Hadi hard. You know what I mean? Like the 2 hardest guys in the IFBB are Flex and Hadi, in my opinion. So Flex is another one of my favorite bodybuilders, by the way. I didn't name him, but I forgot. But Flex is another one. But I think Nick can get that 3rd spot, no doubt. And I wouldn't be shocked if he did. With Brandon and Bonak.
That's my top 3 is Rami, Hadi, and Nick.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Because in 4th place I've got James Hollingshead, then I've got Brandon Curry, then I got William Bonak. What do you think about James Hollingshead? Because Nate and I talked about this. I think he's way under the radar. And you want to talk about potential, like he's got it, man. I think he could be Mr. Olympia at some point. What do you think?
I like James because he's like that kind of guy, you know what I mean? But there's just something missing when I look at him. I don't know what it is, but he's obviously way sicker than I'll ever be. He's huge and peeled to the bone right now. But when he's on stage, now if he can nail this, but he looks vastly different on stage and on pictures. Like it's like he flattens out or something. And it almost looks like he even as big as he is, he doesn't look big. Does that make sense? Like, so if James can get that fixed to where he still looks like he looks now, like that fullness and that roundness on stage, I think he's a threat. And I'm not saying he's going to be Mr. Olympia like anytime soon, but like he's a threat to move in that 6th spot somewhere because he's just so hard and big and round. But when James has a history of coming into the show still looks insane, but he's too small. And when he stands next to Bonak and Nick, he needs to be on his game if he wants to, but that's I'm sure that's a pretty good prediction for James. I mean, that's pretty bold. I don't know. I would like to be, I like James. So I'd like for you to be right, but yeah. I hope he's up there, man, because he's a hard worker and he stays, under the radar as far. I mean, he posts on Instagram, but he just does his thing, man.
For sure. Yeah, I had to, because I'm like I said with Nate, I'm not a fan of Rami. I'm not a fan of Hadi, but I'm trying to be just straight up realistic. Like I don't see if Rami comes in like he did last year, I don't see him getting beaten. And Hadi's been here in the States now for quite a few weeks. And the last couple of years, he just basically flown in, stepped on stage, and you got to keep it real with those two. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just wanted to kind of have some sort of wild card in there. So I put James up there, and then Nick, I've got him in 3rd, man. You can't deny what he's done. So, you know what, Cade, I thank you so much for coming on, man. Sunday afternoon. I know you got stuff going on like all of us do, but thanks for coming on the podcast. If there isn't any final words that you have or anything you don't want to share, if there is, go ahead, but please at least share your Instagram and where people can find you and connect with you.
Instagram is just my name, all straight across, but yeah, that's about it. That's where you could find me.
Cool. All right, man. I really appreciate it. Cade, listeners, thank you so much once again for listening, watching Behind the Muscle podcast. Two huge favors I would ask of you. Please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where I put all of these podcasts out first, and then I go to my other podcast outlets and release them at that time. But YouTube is the first place that I release all of the podcasts. And then also take this episode, share it on your Instagram stories, share it on all your social media platforms, tag Cade, tag myself. That would be greatly appreciated. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.